Hello everyone, I am Tiara Hudson, and for this final project of the theory application paper, my portion of the project was to talk about the ecosystems theory and the institutional perspective. So we will get started. The ecosystems theory was developed by Yuri Bonhoeffer, and so this basically deals with the person in their environment, or the person in their ecosystem, or their ecological area. And so the ecosystems theory, or the ecological systems theory as it is also called, provides one significant means of conceptualizing and understanding human behavior. So basically we're able to see how the human or individual is adapting to his or her environment, how they're interacting with their environment, how the environmental interactions are shaping the individual, and how the individual is shaping its environment. And so it just allows us as social workers to see the impacts that environments make, or the impacts that environments have on the individuals and also the organizations. And so when we look at the ecosystems theory, we have to first define the ecosystem. So the ecosystem is essentially just the bare essentials where the person spends their time. So this could be the spend time with themselves, family, neighborhood, community, any religious affiliations, any other organizations outside of one of the main ones, or just their neighborhood or community. So looking at that and how these interactions are shaping the individual and how the individual is involving itself. And so one thing that I really liked about one of the articles that I read was that it was saying that while the environment does shape the individual, it doesn't always have to. And when looking at the environments of our African American males, we're seeing that the article said that the environments have malfunctioned. And so because of the reactions of the police brutality, the numerous killings, the environment is lashing back on the actual individual, and it's actually a malfunction. So it's causing a disruption in this chain. When looking also at the individual, we can't just look in one concrete place. We have to be able to look at different aspects of their environment to get a holistic view of the individual. So when developing an intervention, we can't just look at the individual in one specific place, like in the workplace or in the school. That would do us a huge disservice. We have to look at the individual in different environments, whether that be school, home, other organizations, out in their community, out in their neighborhood, to see if the behaviors and reactions are across the board. And so a few terms that the ecosystems theory had was transaction, which is basically the article described as a cyclical pattern. So the more the individual reacts or involves itself with society and the environment, the more the environment and society involves itself with the individual. We also have the role, which is basically the culturally accepted behaviors, whether this be through the family system, educational system, or the workplace. It's what society says is acceptable, and this is what the expectations are of the individual through the eyes of society. And then finally we have the system, which is like elements that are orally interrelated and functional whole. So the bits and pieces, the individual person has a system with biological, psychological, and social qualities and characteristics. So we have the individual system, the educational system, the family system, and the work system. So we can have an individual or a system as a group. Next we have the institutional perspective, which was a little bit more, I would say, abstract. So the ecosystems perspective has us looking at specific areas. We have the education, religious affiliation, family, community. The institutional perspective looks at the social institutions. So we still have the educational system, we have the government, political system, but we're not necessarily looking at how this environment affects the individual, but rather how the expectations and the pressures from these institutions are affecting the individual and the organization. So again, this is the process by which societal expectations of appropriate organizational form and behavior come to take a role-like status. So the institutional perspective says as the society adapts, the social institutions adapt, and this organizations adapt to fit the social institution. So rules are changing, regulations are changing, missions and values are changing to fit the social institutions. And so this asks the question, what pressures affect the actual organization, and what hands are actually in the organization to affect it. So this could be the social institutions, but it could also be financial stakeholders. It could be the media is affecting the views of the organization, or the society factors as well. So when we look at African American males in organizations like 100 Black Men, we're thinking, okay, what pressures are being placed on 100 Black men? Is it the financial pressures? Are we looking at the pressures from society and the media and what they say about Black men? And just like how this revolves itself around the missions and values. And we do have some organizations that completely contradict what society says. So society says one thing, and we have organizations like 100 Black Men that are actually empowering and upbuilding the movement of the Black men. Again, it's basically how the institutional perspective is basically how organizations are adapting to the environment around them. And then one of the main terms for the institutional theory is social institutions. And so social institutions are the different roles and expectations and values all together that are instituted to meet the basic societal needs. So in summary, we have the ecosystems theory, which is basically looking at the person through the lens of the environment. Who are they hanging out with? Where they spend their time? The community, the neighborhood, the education system, family, and how that affects the individual. And then we also have the institutional perspective that says, okay, what are the social institutions that are affecting the organizations that the individual is involved in?